For all of you MEM aspirants out there, we have another very inspiring, very grounded, very real story of an application journey to some of the finest MEM programs out there. We have Karan Gupta with us today. Thank you so much, Karan, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sreekar, for having me. Looking forward to talking to you.
All right, great. So the way I start these videos is, by saying that the end result is there, right, in the video title or whatever. We put it in the title that you made it to probably the finest MEM programs out there. Like so Duke, NYU, Johns Hopkins, you name it, and then you made it there. But the end result is clear. We want to know where you come from. Can you talk to us a little bit about your undergrad, because that's a little unconventional compared to the typical Indian applicant.
Yeah, for sure. So I actually come from a really, really small town in Punjab. It's called Adhampur. It's like the closest city would be like Jalandhar. So my story starts like from 10th standard. So everybody actually didn't expect me to do well in like my board exams. And I did like ICSE board exams. And then to everybody's shock, I ended up actually getting the most marks and like topping my school in the entire district. So that's kind of where my journey started, is like when I did really well in my 10th board exams. So that just gave me like a pretty good self-confidence booster. And then after that, I was like looking into what do I want to do next. And then I went into like a new school, CBSE, for my 11th and 12th grade in like Jalandhar. It's called like APJ School near Ramamandi. So after that, after 11th grade, I actually met a senior who was going to the US for his undergrad. And then at that time, like there was a pretty big kind of motion happening of everybody in Punjab kind of going to Canada and like looking into opportunities there. But for me, when I looked into opportunities, I wanted to do something where I can actually learn, grow, but also kind of feel that I'm independent and put in that zone where I have to make it, like literally. So after that, I looked into the US because I figured that like opportunities in India for top applicants are definitely there, but the lifestyle was not what I was looking for. So actually, after getting inspired from the senior who applied to like I think Union College in New York, I looked into this process of like how do I go to the US for my undergrad. So I gave the SAT exam. I think I from my vague memory, I got like a 1400 out of 1600 or something. Then I gave my TOEFL exam, and then I started applying to like different schools. At that point, I was very interested in like aerospace engineering or like aeronautics, because for me, like planes were always something that I really enjoyed. So I applied to like aerospace/mechanical engineering programs all throughout the US for undergrad. So I actually ended up applying to 25 colleges and then got into pretty much every single college I applied to. In the end, like what it came to was like Purdue University versus Miami University. So Miami University, not a lot of people might know, is like in Ohio. It's a pretty good public university and like is very focused on undergrad education. Whereas Purdue University obviously is like one of the big brand names. So there, when I was making the decision, it was based on like the total cost of attendance, obviously, because I actually come from a very middle class family, very humble family. So for me, I wanted to make sure that I didn't put too much pressure on my family for like finances in general. So after deciding between Purdue versus Miami, Miami actually gave me about $26,000 per year scholarship, which was about 90% of my tuition covered, and then I only had to cover about like 15,000 to $15,000 per year. And for that, I ended up getting a student loan. So that's kind of where my journey started. So I actually remember the exact day when I ended up being in the US was like August 9th, 2017. I landed in Ohio, went to my school, and then went through like the orientation. And it was totally a different experience for somebody who's 18 years old, like in a different environment, learning the new culture, new food, and all of that. But I took it as a opportunity and also a challenge to like learn and also meet different people. So I feel like that challenge that I had in my mind really helped me build my profile and also kind of the career that I have so far from the day that I made the decision of going to the US to where I am now for my master's.
Thank you so much for that, insightful journey, and really commendable that you managed to secure such a significant scholarship at an undergraduate level. Those are very rare, typically for international candidates. So kudos to that. Now you majored in mechanical engineering?
So I actually ended up switching my major in the
Uh-huh.
first week itself at Miami University because for me, like I enjoyed computers and mathematics a lot. But when I talked to the professors and like everybody gets an advisor when you like join a university, so I talked to my advisor and kind of talked about my interests, my career goals, and they were also very kind of honest with me. They were like, if you're looking for an aerospace engineer job, like you as an immigrant will be very hard to find that job because most of those jobs have to be like defense cleared, and for that you have to have a citizenship. So that was like something that I found out like day one of Miami University. So I ended up actually switching from mechanical engineering to software engineering, which the first 2 years is like more or less similar to computer science. But in Miami, the last 2 years is very focused on like project management, or like how do you lead a project that's like more digital in the nature. So I really enjoyed that, and actually along the journey, I ended up adding another major. So I did a double major in computer software engineering and business analytics. So that whole duo was very fun, and I kind of came to that combination through a whole journey as well. But I'm more than happy to talk about.
Fantastic. So I think the seeds of maybe engineering management were sort of sown through some of these courses you might have taken during your undergrad. But when did you decide that you want to pursue an engineering management degree? Was an education there something you figured out you wanted in college, or was it after you gained the work experience and the company that you worked for?
So I would say it was 50-50. During college as well, I actually worked a lot of different internships. I did an internship for a private jet company. It was like called Textron Aviation in Kansas. Then I did an internship for a consulting firm, like more on along the lines of like blockchain development from a project management side. Then I also led a lot of different projects for like Miami University itself from like project management. So I kind of enjoyed the project management, product management side right then, and it kind of fit very well with my product experience or like computer science experience because I knew how to build things, but I was kind of the person who was able to narrow that gap between business and technology. So I was the person who's like, okay, the business wants this. This is how you use technology, but how do you make it happen? Let's figure that out by talking to the developers. So I think that skill itself is very rare and it's very important in a lot of different jobs as well as you keep on going higher up in your career. So that's kind of where the seed planted. But then after I started my full-time job at Deloitte in Chicago, I did a lot of work in consulting, and I actually started a bunch of different things there. Like I started at my own app, which was to like automate documentation for Deloitte. I created like a lot of different automation tools for them and led like a bunch of big projects, global projects, working with teams in like Australia, Amsterdam, India all the time. So that's kind of where I realized that in order for me to keep on going higher up in my career, I want to get a master's degree that kind of aligns my technical skill well with the management and leadership skills. So that's where I ended up coming to Gradvine last year and was like, I'm interested in applying for my master's in engineering management.
And I'm going to pick your brains a little bit on a slightly different angle, right? Because you come with a unique perspective, because you've experienced corporate life in America, right? So most of the candidates who I interview after an admit don't have that perspective, but you bring that experience before you're doing your master's degree as well. And the angle that I'm going to bring in is something which we've been trying to change so much, right? And this is the entire idea of shooting these videos so that we give them an informed perspective. There is a common narrative in India where they say, stick to your core, technical is better, people who code only will get a job, right? You have to do engineering only. When you're doing engineering management or something, no, there are no jobs. That's not a very competitive degree. The prestige comes into it. But you've seen corporate America, you've seen your managers, working there. You know how to navigate the process. You've probably done roles similar to what maybe an engineering manager would do already potentially, right? So do you think this is true, where it's only guys who are coding and guys who are technologically oriented are in demand to be hired on a visa?
I would say it's a pretty big stigma. It's also like something that people think when they are here, because that's kind of the top talent and skills that are getting hired in the US. But from my perspective, I would say like in the end, like even if you know or have a biology degree or a chemistry degree, like people come to Deloitte with that background because Deloitte is looking for people who can problem solve or who have like unique perspectives. So in the end, like they want people who can talk to a client, who can figure out like, okay, this is a project you're working on, and this is how you are able to like structure it, navigate it, and like solve it end to end. From the coding standpoint, I would say definitely it's a skill that's good to have, but I wouldn't say it's a requirement. And to be honest, like when I joined Deloitte, like I had a bunch of different coding experiences, but we had like a very extensive 2 month like a boot camp where they made us learn everything from scratch. And then every time you do a project, like you have to learn new technology, you have to learn new coding language, you have to learn like different skills. So again, I would say like in the end, it's more on like how do you communicate, how do you actually put yourself out there, how do you solve problems, and how are you able to actually navigate the corporate structure. Because even if people have those coding skills, sometimes they really struggle getting promoted. They really struggle like going higher up in their career. So I would say like a lot of this kind of got rooted in me while at Miami University. Like I got experiences through internships, through like on-campus projects. I did like something called like a data science internship through Miami, which was to work with like companies like Fifth Third Bank, Cardinal Health, and that is also very crucial for my journey. I actually was able to understand like what do corporates want, like what do people who are VPs and like people in the leadership are looking for. And in the end, to be honest, it's more on about like can they trust you, can are you able to communicate your thoughts, and are you able to communicate clearly with the teams and then solve the problem. And then again, we are living in the world of AI when everything can be automated and like everything can be looked into from like coding standpoint. So I would say um, whoever is looking into this video, like don't think of coding as a big requirement or like looking into like learning 10 different languages, like learning some things from Udemy, Code Academy, and all that. I would say highly focus on your communication skills, soft skills, and understand like what is kind of that unique perspective or skill that you bring to the table that can be leveraged by any company. So for me, like from here on, I can pretty much do anything. Like I can be a data science guy, I can be a data engineer guy, I can be a consultant, a product manager, I can start my own business. So in the end, it's all about like what do you want to do, and then how do you put yourself out there.
And this resonates so much, right? And I was so glad hearing what you were saying because I had a student, reach out to me, and a computer scientist, very good GPA, right? We score, right? Indian students tend to score during their undergrad. Very good GPA, but knew heart and hearts after 4 years of engineering that she doesn't want to code anymore, and she was really interested in the engineering management degree and the career outcomes that come through. But her parents were saying, "No, what is this degree? And you should do computer science, and that's where the future is." And what I told her was, listen, once until undergrad, it's okay. We become engineers in India and then we figure out what you want to do in life, right? But don't do a master's degree with the same pressure. You know what you love and what you don't want to do. If you're good at your job, there is a market in the US that will hire you, right? And
Yeah.
these are exactly the points that you mentioned, right? In terms of soft skills, communication skills, being able to solve problems. And that is, thank you so much for reiterating that. I hope our audience takes that into account as well. So, Karan, I'm going to move on and maybe stick to this angle, a little bit, but a slightly more evolved discussion, right? Um, you've seen the job market again in the US. How important do you think the university you go to in the US is in terms of recruitment and jobs? Do people from good universities have more opportunities?
I mean, again, I would say that's kind of a myth as well, because I came from a tier 2 university, Miami University. I was actually recruiting when it was the worst time during pandemic, and it was like peak of COVID, 2020, 2021. Like it is almost impossible to find a job. Then secondly, even more difficult to find a job that would sponsor you. So at that time, to be honest, like I again took it as a challenge. So what worked for me was networking. kind of using my university's brand as well as like the alumni network. So I would say like for me, Miami University was something that gave me everything. So for me, the name didn't really matter. It was as big as Harvard in my head. So whenever I was like looking into opportunities, like reaching out to people, reaching out to like alumni, like networking with people on LinkedIn, I would just like go all and talk about my experience, talk about what I bring to the table, then how can they like leverage my skills in the company that we are there. So I actually ended up getting this job at Deloitte through like one of those cold LinkedIn emails, and it ended up being like an alumni senior manager from Miami University. And then I had a similar conversation with them, talked about like my interests, talked about like what I was looking into, and talked about like what do I want to do in my future. And then he actually ended up straight up hiring me from there and like putting me into like round two of the interview because he was so impressed with like what I was doing. And then Miami University is in Ohio, so you also kind of have to figure out that all the recruitment is happening for Ohio, so like Cincinnati, Columbus, Cleveland, and the opportunities there are very limited, and also the number of people or companies who will sponsor you is like pretty much like none, zero to one, like very few. So this kind of thing worked out for me, which was like having that mindset that like it's me versus the university. Like the university brand really doesn't matter. It's my brand that's like putting out there, and then just making sure that I talk about my skills. But then I also know like people who came from, for example, Cornell graduates, like NYU graduates, like Columbia graduates, they actually struggle to find jobs or like even get recruited at places like places like Deloitte or other companies, just because in the end they were using the school's brand name rather than their brand name. And they didn't know like what is that uniqueness that they bring to the table, and then what are their skills that will get them hired. So again, I'm still going to Northwestern this year, so obviously like it's a pretty big brand name. But for me, what matters is like who I am and what do I bring to the table. And the person is going to be hiring me, not my university. So for me, like my brand is what matters. And then just making sure that my profile and like whatever I'm doing, the projects and like what I'm getting involved myself in is what I'm actually looking to take my career towards. So I was very intentional with that in undergrad as well. And I actually did so many different things, a lot of different scholarships kept on coming towards my end, a lot of different opportunities. And I also got nominated as Forbes 30 under 30 scholar at Miami University, and like represented Miami University at a pretty big stage. Serena Williams was the chief guest there. So I would say again, like don't have that limitation or kind of mindset that hey, my university is XYZ, it might be tier two, tier three, not the top 20 on US news and whatnot. In the end, it's all about what you put in and like what you want to get out of this experience. And if you try to knock on doors, I'm sure somebody will open that door for you.
All right, thank you so much for bringing that perspective. Again, resonates a view that we support, right? Like Indian students are obsessed with rankings, like, and honestly, Gradvine is guilty of that. But we need views, right? We need to do our marketing, so we need to do a top 10 MEM or a top 20 CS or whatever. But as long as the university is good, it doesn't matter. Of course, don't go to a nonsense school with no reputation or no alumni network to speak of. But that's the problem with people at top schools as well. They get complacent, thinking that the brand will take them places and they relax, and then are upset with the school, right? I expected something else. But it has to be a constant effort. I see folks from San Jose State, Northeastern secure jobs before Columbia grads all the time. It's all about the networking. And thank you again for resonating, our view on that. When I think it's the honest truth, right? So that's why we sort of are in sync pretty much in terms of that. So you're choosing Northwestern to go to. You had pretty much the choice of the best programs you can imagine on the MEM front, right? So can you run us through which ones you got into and what made you pick Northwestern?
Sure, yeah. So I ended up applying to Northwestern, Johns Hopkins, MEM, Northeastern, UIUC, Technology Management Program, Tufts University's MEM, then Duke, Dartmouth, and Cornell. For me, I was kind of always interested in Duke Dartmouth, and Northwestern. So these were kind of my top three, and then Johns Hopkins was my top, like number four. So I actually had a very unique background and kind of like a thought process when I was making this decision on like my number one university. Uh, for me, I've been living in Chicago for the last 3 years. I've built a pretty good wide network in Chicago. I have people in every single industry. I know people in nonprofit space, technology space, insurance, anything that you can speak of. And then secondly, when I was living in the universities, I also wanted to kind of look into like what else can I get out of this experience? Because for me, this is a once in a lifetime experience, like getting a brand name like Northwestern or Duke. It's not just like getting a degree in MEM, it's also about getting that brand name on my resume and also just the opportunities that comes with that. So I had to make a very tough decision between like Duke and Northwestern in the end. For me, I chose Northwestern because of a bunch of different things. Like one of the big things was like it being in Chicago. It's number three cities in the US, probably one of the most dynamic, clean, very vibrant city. I love Chicago. There's so many opportunities, and I actually recently met the mayor of Chicago, Brandon Johnson. And there's the goal of the city is to be like the next SF or next New York in both technology and finance space. So I would say like the future is very bright for the city. Secondly, when I was choosing Northwestern, I'm actually able to get a degree where I'm also able to take classes from their entrepreneurship school, from their Kellogg School of Management. Kellogg School of Management is obviously the number five, number four, like all the top five business school in the world. And then the program itself is very flexible. So for me, like I didn't want to just take all the classes and then like figure out like how extensive it is, like how much work I need to do, and like just also do a lot of things outside of that. So one of the main reasons like I chose Northwestern was like definitely the entrepreneurship side. So Northwestern has like a garage group, which is their incubator, and I'm very interested in like finding what do I want to do next. And one of them is actually being a technical entrepreneur. So definitely would love to get a secure job, but the 5 year or 10 year long term plan is to have my own company. And then just building that network at Northwestern, getting the experience where I can build products from 0 to 1, and then having professors, for example, like Birju Shah, he's like the founder of AI at Uber. He's built products for like over 2 billion people, and he's one of the smartest guy that I've interacted with. On top of that, I get to take classes in the entrepreneurship school. So I'm taking a class this semester, which is to build a medical product from end to end. So it's like a digital medical product, and obviously, for me, like I'm also thinking about what impact can I make in this world. Like how I want to leave something behind that people can remember me by. And I think, in general, the mental health space is something that I'm very interested in, and I feel like India is still lagging in that space a little bit. So I believe by taking that like intervention medical class, I'll be able to build a product specializing in like a mental health space. Then additionally, I also believe that like just the networking space as well as just opportunities. If you don't just think about MEM but the business school, I feel like there will be so many different things that I'll be able to leverage at Northwestern. So that is one of the main decisions that I kind of like used to choose Northwestern. And then one last thing would be like the people in my class are at least 3 to 10 years of work experience. So it's not like I'm going with people who are like newbies or like no experience. So that network itself is something that I feel like will be my lifelong kind of board of directors and people who will be able to guide me through whatever problem or like career questions I have. So I feel like in total, this was just like a right decision for me, might not be the right decision for everybody.
And that's the amount of thought and insight you need to not only pick the right school, but it's going to benefit you in the long run, right? That clarity of
Mhm.
thought, and that only comes with, a lot of research. I see people applying for the sake of applying pretty much that, yeah, I've got to go to the US, I've got to do a master's, I want to get it done in the easiest way possible. And if you do those kinds of shortcuts, don't think about it so much, maybe even if you are a little confused, unable to think about it in this level of depth, get guidance from the right people, right? It's not just about the application, it's not about filling it, it's not about the logistical aspect of it. It is about understanding how the program is and where it's going to take you, and that's why different programs for different people, all of them are wonderful, right? And congrats on that. Northwestern's a brand that will most certainly take you places always. And at the end of the day, brands take you places. At least in the US, that's what I've seen. Really makes a massive difference. So, Karan, the MEM is a complicated process, right? It's not SOP and LOR. Like you would have seen, there are like tens of different things that you have to go through. It's almost become like an MBA or even an undergraduate application at this point. So, when did you start your process?
Yeah, so I actually was a little bit late in starting my process. I kind of made my mindset in December of last year, like 2023, that hey, I'm gonna apply for master's program. I'm gonna like look into furthering my career and looking into something like a program that fits into what I want to do in the future. And at that point, I actually got promoted to a senior consultant at Deloitte, and I got my promotion from analyst to senior consultant in less than 3 years. So I was like 2.5 years in at Deloitte. My next promotion was going to be a manager. I was leading pretty big projects, working with people across the globe. But there was just something that I always had in mind. It's like, is this what I want to do for the rest of my life? And then secondly, am I able to make an impact, whether if it's like just helping people or just like leaving something behind that can like remember who I was to people and remind them of me. So when I was thinking through that, it's a very deep thinking, but I was thinking through that and then kind of like look into different programs. And then around December of last year, I actually took a solo trip to New York City to kind of just like make my mind like, do I want to keep on doing this corporate life for next year or 2 years, and then like 3 years down the road go to an MBA, or is this the right time for me to make that jump? So after that trip, I actually came back to Chicago. I did a lot of research and like looked into a lot of different programs, and then MEM kind of stood out for me because it was a perfect blend of technology, innovation, and leadership, and that is literally what I was looking for. So I would say in December, I gave my GRE exam. I also had a pretty good undergrad GPA, provided that the GPA was also from a US based university. So that kind of gave me a little bit upper hand when I was applying to different programs, just because I had like real experience in the US that I could like put on my statement of purpose on the resume in the activities section. And then around January, I made my mind that okay, I have my profile, I know what I've done, I know what all I can do. So I reached out to Gradvine actually that hey, I'm looking into MEM, and you guys are experts in the MEM program worldwide. So after that, I reached out to Suraj. We had a one-on-one conversation, and I kind of made my mind that okay, I'm going to apply to these like 7 to 10 universities. And it's pretty wild. When I reached out to Suraj, he was like, "Okay, we gotta get started right now." And then in 2 days after that, the deadline to apply for, like the round one deadline was for Duke, Dartmouth, and I think Columbia. So I was like literally talked to Suraj, got off the call, and then went to a cafe to like start working on my SOP, to start like kind of reaching out to all my recommenders and like just making my profile. And then I would say within a few days, I had like all my stuff kind of figured out, and then also just had everything on paper. So for me, I did weeks of work in a few days. So I would definitely recommend people like kind of getting started early. And then also January to March is like very tough time at like companies like Deloitte because it's kind of their busy season. So everybody's hands on deck, like working 60 hours. So at that time, I was working 60-hour weeks at Deloitte in my day job, and then writing essays and like writing about like what do I want to do next in the evening. So I would say like my whole application journey was like between December to end of January was like kind of when I had like all the basic structure ready, like all the big applications already in, and then from there on, I just started writing like the college specific essays and just reaching out to like all my recommenders to make sure my recommendation letters were in. So I would say in total it took me like 2 months to get everything done for my MEA, but it's definitely a 6 month process.
Yeah. This year, I see a lot of people planning their GREs in October and November and still dilly-dally here and there, looking at the deadlines, in January, and never a good idea. Thanks for reiterating that it's best to start, a little early. So Karan, just for the benefit of the audience, before we wrap up, can you summarize your profile in terms of your GRE score, your GPA, if you don't mind?
Yeah, for sure. So from my undergrad, I actually graduated from my university with a software engineering and business analytics double major, and my GPA was 3.7 out of 4.0, and I graduated with the highest honors of cum laude, and also had a lot of different experiences like internships at ENY, PwC, Textron Aviation, a lot of like on-campus opportunities. I was a resident assistant for 2 years. A bunch of different awards and stuff like that was like from my undergrad. And then from my GRE, I actually ended up declining my GRE score, so I don't know what I ended up getting because it was optional at the time when I was applying. And then, secondly, when I looked into my profile and talked to people, they said I really don't need it. But I would say like 320, 160, 160 would probably be like a good average score if you want to like target the top universities. And then, other than that, I would say having Deloitte on my resume was pretty big. I also actually founded Asian American Pacific Islander community at Deloitte, which is like a DEI group for people to come together, and it's like a professional organization. Other than that, I got a bunch of different awards at Deloitte, got promoted from an analyst to senior consultant really quickly. So my overall profile was very strong in that sense. And then something that really helped me was like building a new product from scratch and like just having uh, people from around the globe vouch for me. So from a recommendation standpoint, I had like two senior managers at Deloitte write a recommendation for me, and both senior managers had like 25 plus years of experience at Deloitte and other companies. And then my third recommendation letter was like from the chair of the department at my university that I was part of. So that was kind of my profile. Obviously, a little bit different than a lot of people here. But again, I would say don't let something stop you from applying to a good program. In the end, it's like a combination of different things. It's not like your GRE is going to make or break your application. In the end, how you're presenting yourself, your statement of purpose, who's your recommender, what did you do, what were your extracurriculars, and then most importantly, like what are you trying to get out of this opportunity? As you said, like people do a master's just to do a master's and like get a US degree, but like just knowing why this is important and how this is going to add value to your career, and also just understanding that it's not just a master's, it's 2 years of your life. I think that perspective is very important because in the end, like opportunities come if you look for it, and you will get what you want, but you got to be very mindful of what you're getting yourself into. So I would say like all of that thought and just like being very self-aware and like self-conscious really helped me to be where I am. And then I'm really looking forward to going to Northwestern. As I was saying, I already have like a pretty good network in Chicago, so there's a potential opportunity that I'll actually go back to Deloitte to work back with them, and then do some of the work that I was looking forward to doing, whether it's in product, whether it's like in consulting space, or like even creating my own company in the future. So I feel like sky is the limit from here, but this is kind of the first step that I think will help me get there.
That's so lovely, and honestly, uh, I don't can't think of a better way to wrap this up in terms of the narrative, right? Because I was going to tell you or ask you rather about some advice you'd like to give applicants, and I think the part where you said valuing different parts of your profile, not just looking at the GRE like the be all and end all entrance exam, and really understanding the strengths in your profile, portraying them the right way can really take you places, right? And I think that's such a wonderful message. So thank you so much for sharing that with us, and honestly taking time out and doing this. I think once the admits are done, it's very difficult to catch hold of folks to maybe give back to the next set of students. And I'm
Yeah,
sure the advice you've given today is not only going to inspire a lot of people, but save them from making critical mistakes during the process. So thank you so much for that.
yeah. Thank you so much again for having me. And then just want to wrap up by saying like take this as an opportunity of being in the US, because there's tons of opportunities, there's tons of things that you can do. So have your eyes, ears, and hands always open. And something that I always kind of live by is like closed mouths don't get fed. So please ask for opportunities. Please reach out to people. If you get denied by one person, two people, three people, in the end there will be that one person who guide you and take you to that level and next part of your journey that you are looking to go. So just really excited for everybody who's gonna be taking this next step in their journey, and good luck for being in the US.
All right. And there's one small thing that, I'd like to, ask you about also, Karan, is that a lot of people looking at the US right now, right? And honestly, even when we consult, we evaluate whether going to the US makes sense and then only, push people through to take a service or, put them into the good universities, even though a lot of people outside find it difficult to believe, but we try and be as unbiased as possible. So considering the situation in the US at this time, obviously hiring is a little slow. Even though people are calling it a recession from India, I understand from college campus at least that there's no recession as such. Hiring is certainly so. The job market is certainly a little weaker than what it was. But do you still think the US is a very good land of opportunity for you to grow in terms of career, even in this scenario?
Yeah, I mean, again, I would say these are cycles that keep on going up and down. Like we had a similar cycle in 2008, we had a similar cycle in 2020, we are having a cycle right now. And to be honest, like everything keeps on going up and down. And just having this perspective of like, regardless of what is out there, I'm gonna do everything in my power to get that opportunity is very, very important. Because as you said, like it's definitely tough right now to find jobs, definitely tough to like find employers who are going to sponsoring you. But having that uniqueness, having that diverse perspective, just like being from India or anywhere else from the world, that perspective brings a lot of value to any company in the US. So I feel like in the end, it's also about like how you are selling yourself, and then just making sure that you are like putting your best self out there, and then just leveraging the network is going to be very, very important for people in this next year. So I would say one thing that you want to learn when you're in India now, like just as you enter the US, is the art of networking. And it's literally an art, because everything can be done in the US if you know the right person and if you know the right people. And that network is literally your net worth in the future. So definitely a lot of opportunities still there, a lot of hurdles to cross. But for me, I think it's a challenge that motivates me every day and like something that really brings the best out of me. And at the same time, if you think that's not the right kind of mindset that you have, or like you don't, because there's no like placements as such like India. So there's not like guaranteed job that you might get out of your program. So if you have that mindset, I would say US might not be the right place for you. But if you're looking for a challenge, if you're looking to do something out of the box and like find this time to find yourself and be independent and like do anything that's in your power, I think you are at the right place. Plus, provided that it's actually the world's biggest election year in this century. So about 60 countries in the world are going through elections this year. And obviously, US elections are going to be some of the biggest elections in the world that's coming up. So just have that at the back of your mind. Obviously, don't let that discourage you. But if you think that you don't want to go through this challenge, I would say US might not be the right place.
All right. Thank you so much for giving us that balanced perspective, Karan. And again, for taking out time and joining us and having this conversation. I'm sure this video will go far and wide and benefit a lot of students. So thank you so much. And we look forward to staying in touch with you.
Well, thank you so much, Sreekar. Looking forward to staying in touch. Thank you again for having me.
An absolute pleasure, Karan.